Call the Materials Management Committee meeting to order at 10 a.m. Everybody had a chance to look over the minutes? Is there any additional agenda items? Everybody's good with the minutes. Entertain a motion at this time to approve the minutes as presented.
Make a motion that we accept the minutes.
Second.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same. Motion passed. Recycling hauling reports.
Well, I had this prepared for last month, but I just wanted to do like a mid-year check-in so you guys could see how we were doing so far. Waste hauling, as of the end of June was actually down, so our waste, was down, which is a good thing, by 17%. And our curbside countywide recycling, is down a little bit of a difference of 210 tons, or about 4%. A big chunk of that came from the city of Tecumseh. Their curbside was down by 49 tons, and a large part of that is because they switched to new bins, and the residents were having some growing pains getting used to those. They were trending way down for several months, but I'm happy to report the last couple of months they're starting to go back up. And the DOS is up this year by about 2%, 4.18 tons. And I will say that July numbers are not in here because I was still waiting on some other haulers when I made the packet, but the DOS had its highest month for the past 2 years in July of this year. So, and that included, we were closed several days because of cardboard being full. So that's a really good sign that people are using our program. Any questions on the hauling?
Any questions? Julie's report.
For social media, the popular posts were how to dispose of different items. I've been taking our FAQ page, I've been making posts for different items on there, and people have been interacting with those. We did some recycling boxes posts around Amazon Prime Day, which is probably why the DOS was so busy. Lots of cardboard. We also did a plastic-free July theme that went pretty well. People interacted, especially we were talking about using reusable water bottles, packing your lunch in, the plastic reusable containers, and illegal dumping at the DOS posts were popular because, people want to interact and shame those who do illegal dumping. And the one about the DOS being the highest, and of course, where to take old mattresses. That one was dedicated to you and your Academy Road issue. But we were trying to educate people as much as possible where they can take their bulk trash because it's a problem. Outreach, I did 2 of the days at the county fair. Casey was at one of them with me. The refrigerator organizer that we printed last December to prevent food waste with the stickers, that we ran out of that. That was very popular. And the compost easy start guide was popular as well. And then I also took the how to dispose of cheat sheet that we made around to all the organizations that are in the Health and Human Services building, like the Veterans Group and the Agency on Aging, so they could hand them out to the people they interact with as well. We don't have any new waste hauler licensing. That process will start in November. And I attended a couple of different food waste virtual meetings and the DPA meeting. They meet every other month. A lot of it is the same info getting regurgitated over and over again because everyone's at a different place in the process. So they're trying to start a document sharing thing for the DPA, but nobody's uploading anything to it yet. So that was the big discussion this last month. Current projects and other updates. The big one is just based on the demands of the job and other, I have more than one job. I asked to go from 22 and a half hours a week to 12 hours a week, because with the way the funding's working, I think I can fit everything in the 12 hours, but if not, it's something that Casey and I will discuss, but the county approved that, and that started last week. And another major item was the DOS repairs, cost about $9,000 this year on one of our the cardboard compactor going down. And the other one is it's functioning, but it's kind of given signs that it might go that way as well. So, that's something that we're gonna have to look, at when we look at the solid waste budget. We had a surge of cardboard, as I mentioned before, around the July 4th holiday. So we had to shut down the DOS for several days because we were waiting for a cardboard pickup. Both of them were full. We had tried to open just one side so people could still bring in their plastics and glass, but people did not want to just bring their plastics and glass and were throwing things over and making quite a mess. So we ended up having to shut down the entire thing. We had signs that said, bring your cardboard to Goodwill, but yeah, it became a mess. So they had to shut the whole thing down. But despite that, it was our busiest month. So we had 2 instances this month of illegal dumping at the DOS. Hi, Jen. And one was tires, and then the other was someone rolled up in middle of the day in the daylight with a truck full of carpet rolls and put them in the cardboard compactor. And there were people there, and they took photos and called right away. So we were able to get the video, and the witness did give the number. We forwarded both incidents to the sheriff. The tire, they're just getting a letter, but I do believe the sheriff is investigating the carpet roll person, and we'll be talking to the witness and looking at the video as well. So the sheriff's department has been pretty good on following up right away with me on both those issues. So that's why we've increased our education around where you can take things, because it's becoming an issue where people are dumping things at the dock. Any questions on my report?
See any? Bureau's management planning update?
Well, we did get our grant money finally. When we had applied for the grant, they asked us back in March to prorate what we would need for the rest of the year. So we only asked for $67,000 for the rest of this year. But it didn't come through, I think, until July was when it finally rolled in. And then they said that the deadline to use it all would be the end of next year. So for a lot more than the few months that we prorated for. However, they did say we can apply again next year for more funds, but the way things are going at the state, the way we did our budgeting for next year was we're only counting on that $67,000 right now, because we cannot guarantee that they're going to continue to provide the funds, even though they say they're so what we did, and I can roll this into the budget discussion, is we took out what we thought we would need for this year, and we're only going to spend a certain amount. We wanted to get the recycling pilot started right away before the Christmas season, because people are going to have boxes, and with the DOS getting full up on cardboard, we decided that might be the priority for the funds, so that they ended up dividing the solid waste budget and pulled this money out into material management. And then I believe a portion of my salary, I think, is coming up this year. And a few other things, like we were doing the candy wrappers for Halloween boxes. So things that we have to do this year. we mulled over, but all the, like, the consultation fees that we put in our requests, we're gonna start in January. Just, we're gonna spend what we need, to work on the plan and get the pilot going, for just the recycling this year. And then we'll see how next year goes. And if the pilot's going well, then we can, if they let us apply for more grant monies, then we'll expand it. So that's kind of the update. I mean, when we, and yeah, I can talk about the composting pilot changes. When they came back to us with our approval for the grant, one of the things they said was that it's not sustainable, your composting pilot, how we were going to pay for the hauling. And I pushed back on them and said, it's in the law that you're gonna pay us $60,000 a year for expanding the materials management plan. And they were like, well, it depends on state budgets on whether or not you'll get the money. So it just kind of gave the indication that the 60,000 may not be there. And so we decided, when we were doing our budget meeting, and talking about the way that their feedback, we may have to, as a committee, decide how to change our pilot. The law does require that we have to have X amount of new recycling sites. The law just says we have to have an organics program. It doesn't say we have to provide composting services. And Casey knows that's my baby project. I would love to provide that for people, but if they're not going to pay for it, we can't, so doing education, some of the things we're doing, printing the materials and talking to people and working with our municipalities to see if they can start collecting some, like when, we're collecting fall leaves, can we throw our pumpkins in there to the compost sites? That might be where we have to switch our focus. I know we already approved the pilot, but that will be something that we're going to have to, at a future meeting, discuss our priorities on that. So I will open that up to discussion to you all, because I know you approved our pilots and plans, but any comments or anything on what you would like to focus on in the composting pilot? Or
will this change the amount of funds that are contributed by the county also?
Currently, for the 2026 year, we're maintaining the $100,000 appropriation from general fund to this program. So we are not recommending a change at this point.
I just don't want to see us start a program and then all of a sudden the state doesn't fund it and then the county doesn't have the money for it either.
Well, we see that unfortunately periodically with state mandates. You're mandated to do a service and we may or may not pay you or reimburse you for it. So we will take a look at that as it comes through. There are 3 separate budgets that the state is looking at right now, one from the House, one from the Senate, one from the governor. And there are at least one of them that does eliminate the funding for the materials management program. So I don't know where they will end. All indications are right now that they're not going to be able to come to an agreement by the end of September. And we'll go into some sort of shutdown into October, which means any kind of reimbursements that we would normally be expecting in October will not come until they're able to settle on a budget. So as a county as a whole, as long as a number of our municipalities, we are all kind of waiting to find out what happens at the state level. So we can only project what we know right now, and it makes it very difficult to make certain assumptions going into the future.
I guess going in with that also, I know at the township level, our sharing program is going to decrease tremendously. How's that going to affect the county?
All is, and I would say right now, when you say it's going to be decreased dramatically, that depends on what budget's passed. Right now, we don't know. We currently are in the process of, we just met with a lot of the commissioners individually going over the proposed 2026 proposed budget for the county, specifically general fund. And we can only put a budget together based on what we know right now. And in the end, when we find out what happens with the state budget, we will have to make amendments and determine what course of action we take. We have a number of programs that are funded through grants at either a state or a federal level. And where there are services, programs, or personnel attached to those grants, if those grants do not come through, we have to take a hard look at what that means for services, programs, and staff that are funded through those.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I think that each of the municipalities that depend on state and federal funding for whatever they have going on will probably be looking at the same situation if we can't get things done at the state level fairly quickly.
Now, I'm concerned about funding for townships too, so that's kind of all fits together.
That's kind of where we're at. We may be in a situation where we are mandated by law to provide things in our new materials management plan, but not given the funds that we were promised for them. So that's why when we were talking about the 67,000 that's already appropriated for us, we decided to focus on the recycling because that is what's mandated by law. And the composting is not, so.
So
Just,
we're looking at rewriting that grant for materials management,
yeah, maybe,
maybe.
if there is funds. It may have to be, and that's why like my hours will be less too, so that gives us a little bit of leeway in the budget as well, the solid waste budget, and that's why we also want to handle the consultants that we're gonna need to write our plan in this first chunk too, to get the stuff that we need to get done, for law. So that way it doesn't fall on the county. Because yes, we will be required, those sites that we have to have, so we're gonna have to figure out how to fund those and go from there. That's the current state of things. We were a little pie in the sky. We were conservative, but also we were gonna use every cent that they promised us, and we're not gonna be.
I gotta thank everybody, including myself, because we're volunteers for the county, so we don't have any expenses as a committee to the county, so. Any other comments or questions for Julie?
I'll just say comment wise, composting, I think we just continue the.
Is your mic
direction.
on?
Yeah. Can you not? Yeah, so I think we continue just to include it into the advertisement piece and encourage, good behaviors around composting. But at this time, obviously with what the state has kind of put on our plates, I think that's probably the best foot forward and to focus on recycling, obviously.
Yeah, I would agree. We need to stick with what's mandated and what's not, well, unfortunately. We move forward.
Any other questions or comments? Any from? Okay. What's that, Jim? Yeah.
So moving on, I did send it out this morning. We got our RFPs in over the weekend and last month for our recycling expansion pilot. Just as a reminder, when we approved the plan, we had talked about 3 locations starting. I'm waiting because I think we have a few more years before we're required to have all the sites, but I'm waiting to see what our final population count is before I give you the number on how many we're mandated. But we're starting with 3, and we're gonna do a 9-month pilot starting October 1st. In our grant budget, we had budgeted 10,000. There's a little wiggle room because we are cutting the organics pilot, and we can use the funds that are already appropriated for that. But the 10,000 would equal about 1,100 a month. I did reach out to Eagle. I put on this thing that they had not gotten back to me on what constitutes a drop-off site per the law, but that is not true because they wrote me right before the meeting. So I'm gonna pull up and say, what they did. They said, while ideally a drop-off would accept more than one material type, based on the definition in the law, it appears that as long as the facility is open at least 24 hours per month, it should count as a drop-off. So that means we could count Goodwill as a drop-off, because they collect our board as well, and any other places that do. We also want to note that these standards are the minimum requirements, whereas the intention of MMP is to continuously improve to meet your goals. So they would like us to have more than one thing, but it's not a required by law sort of thing. So, that being said, we received bids from Stevens and LRS on this. Stevens sent a cardboard only and a single stream recycling. The cardboard only would be $212.96 per month per location, which would be $638.88 total. But there's a $100 contamination fee. But we are also in our budget, we budgeted for special lids that would go on there that makes it so people have to break down boxes to put them in there. The pros are because it's so far under budget, we could add a couple more locations throughout the county. And it would cut down on the cardboard demands we've been having at the Dallas lately. And the cons would be that the residents would still have to drive into town for other materials. And their single stream recycling is $600 per load, and that includes delivery, hauling, and disposing. They would take it to Ann Arbor Recycling. Steven suggested that we do rotating over weekends at different sites since they're unmanned. And the units that they have are larger than the small dumpster cardboard only size that we're proposing for the other. And I included a picture in the packet of what their mixed use would be. It would look like that, and then it would go around to different sites. So if we wanted to hit all three, like once a month, the different communities would have that over the weekend. And it would be $600 per and the pros of that it would allow us to grow the program as needed or change locations. So if we're finding that, say, Onstead isn't filling theirs, but Hudson is, or another town is, what we think would be a bigger demand, there'd be more like flexibility or a different site in the town. And it would meet the 24 hours per month requirement. But it would have more flexibility, and residents would be able to recycle all their materials at one location. A con for that would require a lot of communication with our residents to say, it's going to be here this weekend, go here or there, a little more confusion on their part rather than like, I know I can take my recycling here all the time. So that can be a barrier. And then another con is the special lids that we wanted to order wouldn't necessarily fit that container, so there's a risk of contamination. I don't know if you guys have special like things you could.
But it's just doors cut out, make it small.
Yeah.
They can't throw
whatever.
large objects.
Yeah, so those two are the Stevens bid, and then for LRS, they quoted $954 per month for the 3 sites. There would be all materials in the containers that we could fit the special lids on. And that would be twice weekly pickups at those 3 sites.
That was a rear load container. That was not a front load container.
Oh, okay.
It did put in there, that it was a.
Can't hear you.
It was a rear load container that, for that bid, so it's not a front load container, so the lids would have to be a different style lid.
Okay.
But I did put in there rear load, collection, so.
And then at the end of 9 months, there would be a 5% increase if we, continued. And the county would be responsible for any contamination costs. The pros are, it's the most inexpensive option for the, mixed use materials, and residents would be able to recycle all materials at one location. And it would be 24/7, so they wouldn't have to keep track of the schedule. It would just always be there for them, to use. One of the cons is with the 24/7 site, there's a greater risk for contamination, obviously, because it's unmanned. Don't have the budget to have someone sitting there policing it, at all times, which we have with the DOS too, but DOS has the benefit of being right next to buildings and grounds too, and have cameras on it, so we can report that to the sheriff. We can't necessarily do that with remote locations, so. Those are the 3 bits, and I will leave it up to you to discuss and vote on what you would like to go with.
For the rear load option, let's say you take a load to Recycle Ann Arbor and it's determined to be contaminated. Do they provide documentation? Do they go through the load and kind of identify where the contamination came from? Or how would you end up passing back contamination feedback through to the county, I guess, for the service?
So if we deem that the container was, contaminated, 3-4 times in a row, then we would take pictures and send them to the county to correct the issue. When it's a commingle like that, everything gets sorted, so they don't charge a contamination. And that's our site that's gonna be doing it, is gonna be the exchange. If you do take it to Ann Arbor and there's a lot of trash in it, then they will charge contamination, but that's usually done in a couple different avenues. The driver will identify kind of where in the load it came from. And then obviously we would have that conversation before we start charging, but usually 2 or 3 times, it's okay. Anything over that, then it becomes a problem, so.
What is the chargeback fee for contamination?
So I didn't put that in there because it depends on the size of the load that it contaminates. Right now, contamination fees were really huge back in 2021. And they've kind of diminished, because everything is a sort, and sort, for all, recycling. So, we really haven't seen contamination loads like that since that time. So, I haven't been hit with a contamination charge in quite some time. So to be honest with you, I don't even know what it is in the industry anymore, because it's dissipated so far.
For context, we have not had a contamination at the Dawson.
Yeah, a contamination load is really when you're looking at like one single commodity, i.e. cardboard. If you're putting, trash in with a cardboard, you're depleting that commodity to where there's no rebate back for the hauler or for the person that you're providing the service for, the customer. So that's usually where you'll get a contamination fee is if it's that single commodity that's being collected. When it is all-in-one recycling, you usually don't see a contamination.
And what do you guys do as far as education for client contamination? There,
Oh, and that's why they have, on ours, they got the $100 examination. That's more or less based on our driver saying this thing is contaminated and having a trash truck come out. I taking the whole thing and whole cardboard out. Trash.
Any other question?
No question. I guess I'll make a comment. I like the creativity and kind of the thought process behind the rotating container because you do try to counteract contamination and overloading and just like the place turning into a pigsty, which is definitely can happen if you got dumpsters sitting out in a public area, like for a public purpose. So I like that. But to your point, Julie, I think the communication, that's not my specialty in terms of community communication on making sure people know the schedule and what that looks like. I do see that as being a potential headwind for the success of the program is people kind of keeping a track on where it is. And then just from a user perspective, that kind of the generation of recyclable materials is constant. It's not episodic, like people would have a purpose to use it weekly potentially. So just, I guess, kind of stream of conscious on considering the options, obviously understanding too that cost is going to be more of a constraint than previously evaluated. The lower price bid is definitely appealing. So my thoughts.
Any other questions or comments?
I can't, persuade anybody, but what I would say is I do too, if a container is sitting out there unmanned for 24 hours, it's gonna get abused. So there is some concern there as well, so.
To that end, my question would be, is if we do have people that are bringing, let's say they're gonna drop tires, or they're gonna drop furniture, or they're gonna throw their bags of trash, and maybe they don't get in the dumpster, but they're laying around the dumpster, kind of making the eyesore that you were just talking about. Whose responsibility is it to clean that area up? And if it's the county's, who's doing that?
That would be something, work with the municipalities that we would have to discuss. I know that, when we were talking about the compost with Tecumseh, they had said they want it near their buildings and grounds essentially so that they could monitor it. So, that would probably be our suggestion for the cities that are going to host it, to have it near where they're gonna have their crews working to, monitor their public.
Yeah,
works.
just not out on a corner
Yes,
in a
yeah.
country road. You'll get it all.
So then you're suggesting that the municipalities will be responsible for
Yes.
that cleanup? Okay.
Because this is essentially a service we're going to provide for their residents. They're just hosting it. So it is a benefit to their community.
All right. So as a follow-up for the municipalities that'll hold these containers, or even if they're on the rotating, whichever the board decides to go with, will we have some sort of contracts with those municipalities outlining all of the details and the obligations so that it's spelled out clearly?
Yeah, we're going to have
Okay.
Who does the deal out?
the doll. We do the counting. Oh, LRS does the hauling for the doll.
Can we get, it would seem to be prudent to get municipal buy-in on, I guess, the service format because they're so different. I mean, if the municipality is in for the potential, policing of the site with more constant presence of a dumpster, or if they would prefer to see the rotating service, 'cause ultimately those are the folks that are gonna be living with it. I don't know who we need to reach out to for that input or how cumbersome that becomes.
Yeah, talk to the city managers about hosting it, so we're very excited, but I can follow up with them if you'd like to do that.
I think that's a great idea because we may have both services then being used, because we may have a municipality that says, well, we would like, the rotate, and the other ones may say, no, we just want dropped off.
Yeah, I would say that both have risk of contamination and dropping off just large items, tires, couches, all of that, especially the LRS bid. Just because it's gonna be in place for 24 hours and unmanned. So I would say you probably need to get those municipalities involved because if there is contamination or large items left on the site, the hauler is not gonna be able to be responsible for those. So there would be an additional cost that is adhered to the municipality to take care of them. in the personnel.
Any other questions or comments?
Understanding to come back around, I mean, both are fair and the type of service that we requested, so appreciate both you guys for facilitating that. I think they're both good options and ultimately we'll make a good decision either way. It'll be a good place to start. But if we could get municipal input before making a final decision, because we're ultimately, we'll still have to vote on and proceed with something from this room.
This was a voting item, so do they have to vote to carry it forward to next meeting?
No, you can just indicate in your minutes that no action was taken. It'll be brought forward again. There's no formal
Okay.
requirement to make a motion.
I will reach out to the municipalities. I will say that there's been kind of a shuffle in city managers lately, and I know Hudson is one of them, I believe, that is in that process right now, so there- some of them may not know that this is coming, too, so we'll have to follow.
Move on.
Public comment?
Any other business? Public comment? Comment from you guys? Seeing none? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same.